Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my podcast. In our last episode, we discussed the uniqueness of British and American cultures and the impact of peaceful periods on the progress of civilization. Today, we turn our focus to another key factor in building magnificent civilizations: people. This episode will mainly discuss the mobility and migration history of people. When we talk about human mobility, the concept of globalization might come to mind first. Advances in technology and international cooperation have facilitated widespread human movement across the globe. However, you might not realize that large-scale human migrations existed even in ancient times when technology and transportation were not as developed. The history of these movements is much older, more extensive, and deeper than we might think. Throughout the history of world civilizations, various forms of exchanges have occurred, including interactions among people, species migration, commercial activities, and the spread of religions and cultures. Human mobility is the foundation of all these exchanges. Next, we will explore how migrations have occurred throughout history and how they have impacted world civilizations. From a historical perspective, human exchanges can be divided into two major types. The first type is individual-level interactions, such as the journeys of the Chinese monks Faxian and Xuanzang to India for religious texts, and the medieval Arab traveler Ibn Battuta, who explored the known world at that time. These individual journeys had a profound impact on cultural exchanges, which we will discuss in detail in later episodes. Today, we focus on the second type of exchange: mass, large-scale human movements. Since humans first spread out from the African continent, there have been 8 major migrations. The most recent one started in the late 20th century and continues today, mainly triggered by the loosening of immigration policies in English-speaking countries, and is still ongoing. Thus, it is not considered a historical event. In the previous 7 migrations, 4 significant movements occurred in the Western world. The first migration happened around 4000 to 3000 BC, when ancient Indo-European groups moved south from Eastern Europe, the Caucasus region of Central Asia, and the Anatolian Plateau, marking the first large-scale migration in human history. The second migration was related to the Hellenistic movement and the expansion of the Roman Empire. The third involved the rapid expansion of the Arab Empire. The fourth occurred after Columbus discovered the Americas, leading to the massive colonization of the Americas by Europeans. In East and Central Asia, 3 significant migrations occurred. The first took place during the Spring and Autumn period to the Qin and Han dynasties in China, where minority ethnic groups from the surrounding areas entered the Central Plains, and the Han people from the Central Plains migrated outward to Korea, Japan, and Vietnam, gradually forming the Chinese cultural sphere. The second happened during the Wei, Jin, Southern, and Northern dynasties, when nomadic tribes from the northern steppes moved south, and the Central Asian steppe tribes moved west. This not only ended the era of classical civilization, but also led to the decline of both the Western Jin and the Western Roman Empire. The third occurred during the Tang, Song, and Yuan dynasties, which corresponds to the late medieval period in Europe. During this time, the Chinese civilization attracted Arab traders from the west and nomadic tribes from the north, promoting the integration of multiple ethnicities within the region, which gradually led to the formation of the various ethnic groups in Central Asia today. These 7 significant mass movements of people have had a profound impact on world history. This impact can be viewed from 2 perspectives. On one hand, the migration process itself significantly shaped the civilizations of the migrating groups. On the other hand, these migrating groups played a decisive role in the development of civilizations in the new areas they reached. First, people from the same region, because of their migration to different territories, experienced significant cultural differentiation. Taking the first major migration in human history as an example, which started around 4000 BC, ancient Indo-Europeans spread out from Eastern Europe, the Balkan Peninsula, and Central Asia. One group reached the region of Iran and established the Persian civilization based on agriculture. The Persian civilization was characterized by its absolute monarchy, with historical figures such as Cyrus the Great and Darius the Great symbolizing the power of the system. Another portion of the ancient Indo-Europeans migrated west to the Greek peninsula and the Aegean Islands, establishing the Mycenaean civilization. Due to its geographical location, which was more suitable for trade, the Mycenaean civilization developed a culture centered around commercial activities, contrasting sharply with the Persian civilization. Additionally, Indo-Europeans also moved to the Mediterranean coastal areas of Rome, Turkey, and Iberia, forming unique cultural forms distinct from the aforementioned civilizations. Clearly, the migration of the ancient Indo-Europeans was a lengthy process that lasted thousands of years. After thousands of years of independent development, these groups had forgotten their common origins and ancestors and considered themselves solely as residents of their respective regions, waging wars for their own interests. For instance, famous ancient conflicts such as the Greco-Persian Wars, Alexander the Great's campaigns, and the wars between Greece and Rome can actually be seen as conflicts among kin groups. Moreover, the encounter and conflict between newly arrived groups and the existing local populations also had profound effects on the local civilization development. From a historical perspective, the competition and integration between new and old ethnic groups mainly manifest in four scenarios. The first scenario is where new migrating groups disrupt or change the existing civilization processes in the areas they enter. The second scenario occurs when the local civilization level is low or undeveloped. If a highly developed group migrates into such an area, a new civilization quickly emerges. For example, when the ancient Indo-Europeans first arrived on the Iranian plateau, they rapidly initiated the birth of a new civilization in that region. The third scenario is when a not fully civilized tribe destroys an advanced civilization. For instance, in the 4th century during the Wei, Jin, Southern, and Northern dynasties period in China, nomadic tribes from Siberia and the Mongolian plateau moved south and almost destroyed the agrarian civilization of the Central Plains. The fourth scenario is the merging of two existing advanced civilizations, producing a new form of civilization. For example, in the mid-4th century BC, after Alexander the Great's eastern campaigns, Greek civilization spread throughout the Mediterranean coastal areas, including Egypt. When the Greeks arrived in Egypt, they did not replace the existing Egyptian civilization, but created a new Hellenized Egyptian civilization, embodied by the Ptolemaic dynasty, established by one of Alexander's generals. This mixed civilization is reflected in the way Egyptians maintained their lifestyle while being able to communicate effortlessly with the Romans. Thus, the Ptolemaic dynasty became a dynasty with both Egyptian and Greek cultural characteristics. Similarly, the Seleucid Empire, founded by another of Alexander's generals, Seleucus, successfully integrated Persian, Greek, and Indian Buddhist cultures, forming an empire rich in cultural diversity. The Seleucid Empire covered modern-day Iran, Mesopotamia, and even parts of India. Influenced deeply by Indian culture, many Greeks within the empire adopted Buddhism, but the Buddhism in the Seleucid Empire was different from the traditional Buddhism in southern India. For example, the light and flowing garments of Buddha statues and figures in the Dunhuang murals, as if blown by the wind, are actually typical of Greek artistic techniques, which significantly differ from the style of Indian Buddha statues. This difference arises because Buddhism in China primarily came from northern India, where it was greatly influenced by Greek culture. Thus, a new multicultural blend of cultures formed in northern India. In contrast, southern India, having less contact with Greek civilization, developed a distinct set of ideas and cultural styles. Besides the shaping and merging of civilizations, many significant historical events have also been triggered by human migration. In the past, the rise and fall of nations were often attributed to the abilities of rulers or the quality of their political systems, with prosperity believed to depend on wise governance and decline blamed on political errors or inept rulers. However, in reality, large-scale movements of people can have impacts on a nation that far exceed the influence of any single ruler or policy system. For example, the Five Barbarians chaos at the end of Western Jin in China is a classic instance. At that time, multiple nomadic tribes took advantage of the political weakness of the Jin dynasty to invade the Central Plains, seizing territory from the Han dynasty and eventually establishing the 16 kingdoms of the Five Barbarians. This was not merely a political failure, but a direct consequence of complex human movements and ethnic conflicts. In the past, historians often started with the corruption of the Western Jin ruling class, believing that internal chaos and weakness led to the large-scale invasion by northern nomadic tribes. However, more than 200 years before the Five Barbarians chaos, right from the early Eastern Han dynasty, the court frequently relocated various ethnic groups from the northern steppes to the interior. This migration process accelerated during the Tao Wei period. With the establishment of the Western Jin, the government made strenuous efforts to relocate nomadic groups such as the Xiongnu, Jie, Xianbei, and Qiang. By then, these groups had extended their influence deep into the Jing and Wei River regions of the Shanxi-Guangzhong Plain, pressing close to the Western Jin capital, Luoyang. By the late Western Jin period, when the Xiongnu established their authority, the situation of the Hu people moving southward was irreversible. Even the emergence of one or two wise rulers or ministers could only delay the inevitable. Studying history requires us to adopt a broader perspective and delve into the key factors that shape historical processes. Only then can we truly understand our origins and future directions. Now, I will briefly summarize today's content. We discussed the profound impact of population movements and migrations on world civilizations. Through exploring the great migrations in human history, we observed the cultural diversity generated within the same group due to migration, as well as the collisions and integrations among different groups through migration. Some seemingly random historical events are often influenced by population movements. By understanding the history of these human interactions, we can better appreciate the reasons behind the differences among people from various regions. All right, that concludes today's podcast. Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, don't forget to like and use the super thanks to support us. Welcome new listeners to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next episode. Goodbye.